Dun dun dun.
Let's do it on go. 3, 2, 1, go. All right.
Okay.
There we go. Welcome to the Odyssean Flywheel. That's Steve over there. I'm Jeff. And what do we got to allow this week, Steve? Any?
Well, we got a few things going on this week, right?
Right, right. Kanye, Mo Kanye.
Kanye is.
Yeah,
Here's the thing. So I agree with everyone who says he's a celebrity. That doesn't mean we give him any more voice or importance. And I agree. He clearly doesn't have the history and the knowledge. So he clearly wants it, and he's clearly willing to listen to the evidence
yeah,
and make some decisions. You see the people giving him different information, and he's
right,
having to try to assimilate, and he's posting it both.
right,
But
right.
everything he has said has been consistent to his original message.
Well, and I, he,
In a way that I think speaks well for him. I'm not saying it
I do
means
too.
we should listen to him, just that it speaks well for him.
Right. Well, he's a genuine guy. Like you don't have to worry or wonder. Does he mean that when he says something? It's
Right.
it. He's like Owen Benjamin insofar as he may be wrong, but he's not lying. And
Right.
I'm finding that it's a lot easier for me to contend with people who are wrong but genuinely so. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Uh,
Yep. And I think with good intentions. Because there's people who
yeah.
are
Well.
genuinely wrong. I think
Right.
that's what you mean by genuinely so. Because there are
Well.
people who are genuinely wrong, but not for good reasons.
Well. Well, I meant sincere is what I
Yes.
meant.
Yes.
Um, and I never made an effort to keep up with Kanye, and the only time I really
Right.
heard anything about him was when he had aggravated enough people that it was all over the news all of a sudden. Uh,
Mhm.
so uh, I
So
don't.
here's interesting. Did you see his TMZ interview he did?
I didn't see it. The one with Candace Owen. I haven't seen it
Yeah.
yet.
I haven't seen it either, but I saw the title that he's being like, why am I hiding all this stuff? Why am I trying to pretend I'm not, I'm someone I'm not? And he's out here, hey, I had lipo and I got hooked on opioids and I was a mess.
Yeah. Well, he did an interview with Charlemagne.
Yeah,
That's
I haven't seen that one. Or
well,
heard that one.
I watched a bunch of it. I say watch, listened to a
Mhm.
bunch of it, and he he doesn't back down from telling what would be an embarrassing truth, what would ordinarily be considered an embarrassing truth. Um, there were very few things that he was asked that he didn't. He very many things that he gave like significant pause before answering, but
Uh-huh.
it was kind of a I need to organize my thoughts on this
Right.
kind of a pause, or that's the way it seemed to play out afterwards. But there were like maybe two questions in the whole thing. That one question, I think Charlemagne asked him what medications was he on, and he said, "I'm not going to tell you." And then another question was he had been I want to say he had been talking about um, how he Charlemagne asked him at one point, did he seek counseling, professional counseling, and Kanye said, "Not professional counseling. The world is my counselor. Everybody I talk to, I surround myself with people that I can tell them, whatever I'm thinking. I can be honest with them. I can
Mm-hmm.
be genuine with them, and I can take their feedback." And he said, Charlemagne said, "Well, I think that was when he asked, well, how does that work with the Kardashians? Because, you know, how do you worry that you're going to be a story, a plot line for him,
Uh-huh.
and Kanye kind of laughed and said, said, "Man, how did he say it? I don't remember, but it was, man, I'm gonna have to give you a slick answer here because I got to go home tonight," which I
But
thought was,
yes,
again, he was being genuine, and
right,
he doesn't seem to. There are a lot of things like it's almost like he hasn't um, been exposed to some of the the kipple that goes along with, and I don't even want to say an anti-left stance, but an individualism thing
yeah,
that has, over the course of, especially in the last couple of years, become coupled with individualism. A lot of things, a lot of Thomas Sowell, a lot of, and not that they weren't already. It's just that they're so much easier to find. People are calling
right.
back to a lot of these things, and it's not well. He tweeted something the other day uh, about the Democrats and the Republicans, and the Republicans were the ones who were responsible for freeing the slaves, and of course the Democrats have a response to that, like a standard
Right.
response to that, and it's not without merit. I mean, it's not like it doesn't, but and that kind of played out a little bit on Twitter. I think it's interesting, and I I I don't think Scott Adams, creator of Dilbert, is being
Mm.
too optimistic when he illustrated the. I don't think he was being too optimistic when he illustrated the notion that this could be a Kanye, not pro-Trump Kanye, not like pro-Trump agenda Kanye, but
Right.
Kanye actively not buying all of the additional, well, the kipple that goes along with the uh, the left doctrine. Um, I don't think he was being too optimistic when he was like, "Hey, uh, I don't know this guy's politics, but he has a he has a certain integrity," you know.
Yeah.
And when I
Well,
say
I
that, I
think
mean anybody that follows Kanye seems to understand that he might say and do some crazy stuff, but he's not gonna do anything that he doesn't feel is um, the
true.
truth.
Right.
And
Right.
and
And,
that's a
and even
thing
going
which
to
can function in a network, that can flourish even in a
yeah,
network. Um,
yeah. I mean, I think one of the reasons we're seeing so much attention on him, after the initial, furor over it, is because when people go and say, "Well, what is he saying today?" Because I honestly, half my brain, I'm thinking he's going to say something today that's like, "Oh, he's just you know, this was just something he did, or he's been, I just kind of expect it to just all come crashing down every day, right? And but he keeps being consistent. His message is evolving. He's learning new things. He's having these discussions on text. He's sharing the discussions he's having on text in a way that looks very genuine. He's showing his own portions. He's showing text from different friends saying different things, not just the one friend.
yeah, yeah,
And um, and he's talking about how the fact that, and I think this is really big. I mean, he talked about this today. Once again, I'm being attacked for presenting new ideas. That he's seeing that he's being attacked specifically just for speaking. And he has this most recent tweet from 38 minutes ago. Actually, it's probably 40 now, but was a Harriet Tubman tweet that said, "I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves." And that's what he got into today. Was we've been mentally imprisoned. There was slavery for a long time, and then we imprisoned ourselves by locking ourselves into this mindset and position,
Right.
and we haven't reevaluated. Now, I wouldn't say they've enslaved themselves for 400 more years, but it's almost been like, yeah, there's been this regression, and this is interesting. So this kind of ties into this. So I had thought I remember because someone, one of the tweets he got given, I think by John Legend, was talking about how Lyndon Johnson, passed the Civil Rights Act and welfare.
Yeah.
And so I went to look because I remember hearing this quote that he had basically said, we're going to wrap up the N-word vote for the next 100 years with this, or I'll have those.
Yeah. I'm familiar with the quote.
And this is very left. They equivocate so much because they basically say, well, we don't know if he actually said that quote. We do know he said these other things, like these Negroes, they're getting pretty uppity these days, and that's a problem for us since they've got something now they've never had before, the political pull to back up their uppityness. Now we've got to do something about this. We've got to give them a little something, just enough to quiet them down, not enough to make a difference. That's a direct quote. There's also direct quotes with the N-word in them.
Oh, yeah.
That he used to use. So there are instances of casual racism that can't be so easily rationalized as like, so if anyone else had said this, they would be discarded as useless to society because they were racist. But we're going to equivocate about LBJ, who was clearly racist. At least in the context of today, he should be considered just flat out super racist.
Right.
Even
if you look and you go, well, he said this one thing, but he did another, that should at least bring some kind of a spirit of inquiry to some of the things which he did and some of the fallout of those things, as alluded to by current number crunching. You can look at the erosion of the black families under the social safety net system that he implemented. That's an awful deal. And now we're in this awful position where it's extremely difficult, not just to talk about it, but what would a solution look like,
Right.
I mean,
because there's no good solution because we're in this situation, and how do you get out of it without just dropping a bunch of families that are in the crap and just basically saying, yeah, sorry for you guys, bye, more or less.
And I'm going to illustrate. I'm going to try and walk through what it is that we're talking about because I don't know who might be listening and they may not have this all walked out, and so I'm going to try and make a point.
I think that's a good idea.
So okay, the welfare system. Here's what we're talking about in regards to the erosion of the black family over the course of the social safety net. Well, when it was implemented, when the welfare system was implemented, I think it. If you were black, born in this country, you were 75 or 80% chance. There was a 75 or 80% chance that you would be born into a two-parent household.
Yeah, it was something like 25% of fatherless households in an African American family,
right.
And that was considered by some sociologists. That was considered horrific. Like that was an unacceptably high number, and we needed to fix that.
Right.
And
that's
people
back
already
then.
Very worried about that.
Right, and that's back then. Of course, the welfare system incentivized
fatherless homes.
It paid single mothers support. And now, a knee-jerk reaction in opposition to this, my thinking would be, well, that doesn't mean that everybody was going, well, the government will pay for me if I run my husband off or if I run my baby daddy off or whatever, because that could even be a small percentage of people who consciously are, articulated that strategy. For nevertheless, that's a significant, even for people who aren't thinking that or weren't ever thinking that, that's a significant factor. I mean, it's something that weighs on the day-to-day life of these very poor communities. And the problem with the erosion of because now it's, what is it now? What's the
Well, and also the
stat
early
now?
systems incentivized. Now the early welfare systems also incentivized kids having
Yes.
kids.
Yes. So
So
not
they
just
incentivized no father and having more kids.
right, right. So you have that situation, and again, it's incentivizing, and it doesn't mean that
Right.
all of these poor women were, rubbing their hands together, going, ah ha ha ha, I'm on
Right.
the government dime, run off baby daddy. They weren't, that doesn't have to be what they were consciously doing when you consider that they were having to do day-to-day stuff. I mean, day-to-day providing for children,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yep.
dealing with some guy's bullshit on top of it. He might be around when
Well,
he wants to be around. Uh,
even imagine the best situation where the man wants to be involved, and they're both poor, they don't have good jobs, or they don't have jobs, and she is, they're thinking about things. How do we make this work? And they're like, well, if we don't get married, then I still keep getting money.
yeah,
And if we have a kid, we get more money. And then you've got these unmarried couples where, even though they intend to stay together, there's no legal bond. There's no difficulty in separating. There's no, when something gets rough or someone's got to go somewhere for a job, they leave and then they just don't come back because they're not actually married. There's no actual commitment that's been made. So
right,
even in the best situation where you're both basically saying, we want to be together, but really it's hard and we get more money and it's a little bit easier if we're not married because he can have a job and I
right,
can get money from the government and we can just not be married,
right,
you know?
right,
So, I mean, you don't even have to be trying to, deal with a crappy guy. It's just, in that situation, I can see doing the math and saying, we'll be married to each other, but not legally. Like
right.
we know we're together. We're not going to, but that's not the same. That you haven't made that commitment. It's not the same.
Well, when you've got, again, if you're that far down on the economic scale, I mean the
Mm-hmm.
relative economic scale,
Mm-hmm.
you get far enough down, you can't get there from here. You know what I'm saying? There's no any little hiccup can so totally derail any financial
Yep.
hiccup can so totally
Yep.
derail not just your month and not just for a year, but derail the whole shooting match, and you'll never get caught up that that those incentives start becoming a important. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
so anyway, so that was back then when it was implemented. We had 25% of kids in these communities who were born into
Single mother homes.
single mother homes, and today it's 80% or 85% born
It's
to
it's, it's something
single mother homes.
unbelievable.
Yeah,
And I
it's
think
ridiculously high, and the problem, there are lots of problems, but a big problem, and there is more and more research, careful research, um, about this every day. It seems that children who are not raised in households with fathers and children who are not raised in communities where there are a lot of
right.
fathers, competent, fathers, that seems to be a big factor that people who are unable to climb in economic status, they have that in common.
Yep. or people who are unable to maintain economic status even have that in
Yeah.
common.
Well, that happens too. That's but you get far enough down on the totem pole, and you know, you got no choice but to fall off. You can't get any
Yeah.
farther down. If you're still on the pole, you're just gonna be stuck. And that's the that's the well, like when Peterson talks about one of the dilemmas with the free market, and it's not just the free market; it's every system. But with the free market, people start stacking up at the bottom, and you can't have too many people stacking up at the bottom, or the whole system falls apart. And it's not necessarily fair that anybody stacks up on the bottom in such a way as they can't get themselves out of it, or at least can't get their children out of it. But
Yeah, this is the interesting thing about it, which is um, that we're in this situation now. It's happened, and it's the norm. It's the cultural norm, and the kids have grown up with the idea that fathers don't stick around. So when they grow up, they don't need to stick around.
right,
And it's the cultural norm now. And even though they have changed the programs, they said, "Oh, that was a horrible thing we did where we encouraged people not to have, but it was the 90s when they changed it and said, yeah, it probably was a bad idea to make it so that, having a husband was a bad thing, and it probably was a bad thing to say, hey, if you have more kids, we'll pay you more money. So now, if you adopt or have another child and they, more than 10 months into the, getting onto welfare, they don't count. So basically, if you were pregnant already, we're going to count that child. Or in the middle of an adoption, we're going to count that child. But if you are, getting pregnant afterwards, that child doesn't count on welfare. It's not someone that gets added up. So I don't know. So it's like, well, they tried to change it, but it's kind of like too late.
yeah, well,
We're in this situation.
we're in the situation, and with, because see again, I look at situations in these poor communities, and you see high crime rates, you see a lot of gang stuff, and a lot of other things as well. But I look at them and I think, well, if your people are gonna, we think in narratives. Human beings think in narratives. We think in story, and we think in ideal, like we pursue ideals. And so if you are a young man or a boy and you're looking around the neighborhood, and the ideal males that you see, the ones that get the admiration of at least significant amounts of women, who have spending money, who have, if not personal respect, then at least are feared, that those are all guys that are in gangs, that kind of thing is, again, difficult to get out of. That's it. That's easy. That's an easy system to just roll with, and of course, everybody doesn't do that. Some folks make it out. Some folks are hyper industrious, hyper intelligent, and either do whatever it takes to get their children out of that, or do whatever it takes to get themselves out of it. But they're few and far between, because I think it would take an unusually industrious or an unusually intelligent person, or maybe both, because it's not like guys in gangs are stupid. I mean, I'm sure that they've got stupid guys in there too, because stupid guys are everywhere. But you're talking amounts of money and winner take all hierarchies, and the people that float to the top of those are going to tend to at least be extremely shrewd and cunning, if not outright intelligent.
Yeah.
I mean, like
Right.
like very, very intelligent. But
And
um,
men like to scale the local hierarchy, whatever it is.
yeah, oh yeah, and they're we
And
do.
if it's the hierarchy that they have to associate value with the hierarchy, but if they associate value with the hierarchy at all, we want to go up it as far as we can. We want to test ourselves and see where we can get.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know. Um, so it's a problem that feeds itself. It's a problem that is part of everybody's problem. Um, and again, like with the deal with the free markets and people stacking up on the bottom, that's a that's a bad deal, and it's going to bite us. But it's the least unfair system that anybody has come up
Right.
with. You know,
Right.
it's
That's the quote, right? Capitalism is the worst economic system ever, except for all the other ones.
right, right, right.
Um, yeah, and I had a coworker who was very thoughtful on these things. He's much more progressive than I am, but he actually does do the research, and he's not knee jerk. He does think about things, and he says, I had this problem with capitalism because there's a feature of it that I think is a feature and not a bug, that we stack up a poor, an underclass. We stack up the poor. That it's they're always going to be there, and there's no way for the system. The system of capitalism has to have them, pretty much. And he said, but he acknowledged that, yeah, but I see that our attempts at socialism and communism have been way worse, and I don't see a reason why they would be better. I just wish there was a better option. Like, I don't like that feature. I think it's a bad feature of capitalism, and I think it's a feature that you're always gonna run into.
Well, and
So
I don't know how it can. Yeah, it's a feature that you're always going to run into, and I don't know. I think that it's very possibly a mistake to look at it and go, capitalism as a system of economics or capitalism as a you know, style of government, or capitalism as a top spin on culture is, I think that it may be that what the part of capitalism that makes this happen, that this is a byproduct of,
mhm.
may very well be that whole the creative production of anything that's ever been observed in the universe. That same
Yeah,
distribution scale.
the Pareto distribution, right?
Right, yeah. You know, it's like Peterson
Yeah,
said. It even governs the mass of stars within a galaxy, and
right.
an obvious principle. It's obvious and ancient because people have been looking at it for a very long time. The Matthew principle. You
Yeah,
know. Um,
yeah, it's true. Websites too. The top 10 websites have more traffic than the rest of the web combined, something like
there
that.
you go. There you go.
Um, it's kind of freaky when you think about it that way. I mean, Netflix, I think, is like half of the internet traffic,
Really?
something like that. They are an
Oh,
insane
half of the
quantity of
data
internet traffic.
traffic.
Yeah, half the
Yeah. Okay,
data.
that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Now I think there are some. I think probably, but honestly, like, if I'm gonna go watch, I'm wondering if some of the streaming TV protocols now are going to compete. Like DirecTV Now and
YouTube.
YouTube TV and stuff, where you're getting the live TV streams.
Right.
If they might be biting into that a little bit. But if I'm gonna go watch a show on streaming, I just go to Netflix. I don't go to. Every once in a while we'll look on Amazon, but mostly we just go to Netflix. Um, yeah, so the Kanye thing is interesting to me. I think it's something to watch. It's something to watch because there are a lot of people that give a lot of credence to what he says and will actually pay attention to him saying
That's
something
the
and
thing.
say, "Hey, maybe this means something." Not that Kanye knows everything. He clearly doesn't, and he's very upfront about the fact that he doesn't. He's very
Right.
excited about the new things he learns.
Right.
But the fact that he has realized that this victim mentality has been self-enslavement, effectively.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
that's
and that's
actually, that's an interesting. Let me follow into that. That the guy in the van in Canada who ran people over,
right.
They're saying he's an incel. Are you familiar with these? The involuntarily celibate men who get really pissed off because no women ever want to sleep with them, and they want to sleep with women. There was one other that shot up a bunch of people last year or something. I can't remember what he did. I think he shot up a bunch of people in like Seattle or something. These are a bunch of guys who are dwelling in their perceived victimhood.
Yes, yes.
Even the left can see that this is bad.
Right.
But I think it's mostly because it's guys, and guys aren't allowed to be victims because we're guys and we're patriarchy. But they can see that this group is.
Don't say that very loud.
Women
could be listening.
Yeah. No, no one's listening to this, Jefferson. We're just doing this for our
I
own
know,
benefit.
I know, dude.
I'll
get bored and be like, hey, I need to listen to Steve for a little while. It'll kick up to like 3 views.
Yeah. So you're generating all of our views. The interesting bit though is that even the left can see that these guys are just reveling in victimhood, and it's unhealthy, and that some of them are snapping.
Yeah.
But they don't understand why they're snapping. They don't understand, why would they? These people are just ridiculous. They're unbelievable. They're stupid. They're just like you. They just have a different victimhood, a victimhood that you don't believe is justified.
Right. And that's a strange thing for the left to contend with while they are, what do you do about the guys who aren't getting laid? That's Well, what do you do about those?
And you can't even make arguments about their standards are unreasonable. Really? Their standards are unreasonable. What are realistic standards for? Let's take that argument to one of your other oppressed groups. Maybe their standards are unreasonable. Oh no, their standards aren't unreasonable. They're entitled to whatever they want. Oh, okay, so these guys are entitled to whatever they want. Well, no. So
who framed incel?
Who framed it? They call themselves that.
They call themselves
that. That's the name they give themselves is incels.
I
involuntarily celibate.
I think that might be genius. I mean, like a genius approach. Okay, bear with me. All right, so you've got guys that aren't getting laid for whatever reason. Presumably they're exhibiting some beta something or another, beta male somethings, and they're not getting laid, and they're resentful, and they're hating women, or they're hating society at large, and they're hating
women in general. They believe women owe them sex.
Okay, so the dude that drove the van into the crowd was a guy who thought women owed him sex.
Yes.
Okay. Huh. Okay. And they think the shooters and stuff were these guys too?
There was one shooter last year, I think. One of the mass shooters in the U.S. in the last year or two was an incel, and this guy even said this guy's our hero. There was one. There haven't been a lot. There's been 2 so far. Two knowing large violent incidents.
Okay. Well,
that's a really interesting topic. Is this idea that you've got this idea that victimhood is what we should be listening to, and but these guys are perceiving victimhood.
So what is the left? Does anybody on the left have a theory on how they should address incels?
They're horrible, fragile, males.
Yeah, but what do you do with them? Do they have any ideas?
No, you just tell them they're terrible. Actually, that's a good segue into I have finally codified what my issue is with Ben Shapiro.
Okay.
I don't think he speaks falsely, but I don't think he ever offers solutions. He only points out problems with the other side, and that's not useless. But I've seen so many quotes of him like, "Hey, if you want to talk about this problem, we can talk about it. But if you can't even get to there, then we can't talk about it. And he always says that. And then he never offers any kind. I've never heard him, and I haven't listened to everything he's done. I don't listen to his podcast in general. I'll listen to quotes here and there. I'll, look at speeches here and there, and I read his Twitter fairly often. But like, he never says, hey, maybe we should consider doing this instead. He always just says, this won't work. That's not going to work. That's a terrible idea. Whether it's about Trump, whether it's about, some lefty saying something.
Right.
And that is starting to bother me, because that's actually something, I think that's a failing of the Republicans, certainly, but the conservatives in general, which is this unwillingness to offer solutions and just a constant, partially because we understand how complicated the problem is and how complicated the solutions have to be. But at the same time, just this unwillingness to give a solution and just to say, that's not going to work, that's a problem. That's not going to work, that's a problem. That's not going to work, that's a problem. Instead of, well, we have a problem here. I think we all agree that there is a problem here. I don't know if we agree on what exactly to call that problem, but we do want to solve it. So let's, here's a possible solution to that problem. I'm not hearing that from conservatives. I'm hearing there is this problem. And I'm hearing that the solution of the certain problems, like, oh, we can't talk, oh, we're going to have these conversations out in the public, and we're just going to make them normal, and we're going to force the world to listen to us. And that is a solution to a problem. But the actual problems facing the world that people are worried about, we're not. I haven't heard solutions for.
So here is where we're winding back to Kanye now, because here is what I have been thinking. I've been thinking, well, first off, anybody that has been expecting Kanye to go, Shazam, I'm a Republican, or Shazam, I'm a conservative, is crazy. He's an artist.
Yep.
He's an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And being truthful has got nothing to do with being a conservative.
That's true. That's
true. But he seems like he is having lots of conversations with lots of different people with varying opinions, and he is paying attention and actually having a conversation with those people. And
yep.
I'm hoping that we're getting close to the point where I don't think Kanye needs to just up and start listening to Ben Shapiro and Candace Owen and Charlie Kirk and everybody else constantly, or even Jordan Peterson constantly. Although if he's going to listen to somebody constantly, that'd be the dude.
Yeah, probably.
But
because he's going to tell him to make his bed and
right. Well, Kanye's. I guarantee you, Kanye's bed's made. His bed ain't made if he's in it.
Yeah, I guarantee you his bed's made. Either make your own bed or hire someone to do it for you.
Yeah, have somebody clean your room. Dude had a $50 million. He was $50 million in. Is that what he was saying on Twitter a few years ago? $50 million in debt, and now apparently he's, Yee is now a $1 billion company. Yay, man. Good on him. But what I was going to say is that conversations are actually going, I hope, really, really hope, are actually starting now. Ben Shapiro's fixing to start a long-form conversation podcast on Sundays,
right.
And his first guest is going to be Jordan Peterson, where they talk for an hour.
And I'm pretty sure his second guest is going to be Dave Rubin.
I kind of gathered that too, from Twitter. Excuse me. So I like this long-form conversation stuff. And again, more than a debate. Oh, go ahead.
Yes. I think long-form conversation is a good step to being able to talk about issues and being able to cover stuff, but it doesn't suggest it suggests solutions to the free speech problem. It suggests solutions to getting ideas out there and removing no platforming, making people, and there's a lot of people who get upset with Dave Rubin for not hardball like driving interviews
Right,
of
right,
people, but he's trying to get them to talk and explain their ideas so that you can then evaluate their ideas. And I can
right,
look
right,
at, people like David Frum and say, I like some of the things he said. Like, I really think he's right that the Republicans stopped proposing their own legislation and just started responding to whatever the Democrats were doing. But then I thought he was totally wrong when he said that any parent who owns a gun is just a bad parent. Like, well,
right,
that's
right.
just,
That's
like,
dumb.
and I can make those, I can say, well, he has some opinions that I think are defensible and some opinions that I think you hold too strongly. And like we said, well, it's absolutely clear that the Russians,
Right,
colluded,
right,
the Russians interfered on the side of Trump. And I'm like, I don't think that's as clear as you think it is.
right,
Um, I mean, I think yes, but I don't think they did it just for him. Like, I think he's got a couple of opinions that he's holding to simplistically, and I think he has a couple of opinions that he's holding to that are right on. And by asking the interview in that manner, I was able to get kind of his whole body of opinion.
right.
And then meanwhile, you got Sebastian Gorka that was on this last week,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
who did the same thing, and I think Gorka's got some opinions that are probably not. Yeah, I don't know if I totally buy that, but I think these other things you say are absolutely true. So, you get to hear what they really think and what they're, if you're always peppering them, they get on their defensive. And if you are, kind of kind and gentle and, you let
Larry
them
Kinging it
talk, then
up. There you go.
then they tell you what they really think. And then
Yeah,
people can look at them and say, oh, that's what they really think. Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Or,
Well,
so.
and a longer form conversation allows for nuance, like actual nuance. Now, I don't mean a debate, and I don't mean like if you put
Right.
Schenck on one Schenck, whatever Young Turks dude. If you
Yeah.
put him on one side of the
Right.
room and Steven Crowder on the other side of the room, they're not going to have a meaningful conversation. It'll probably be funny, but that's just because I kind of like Steven Crowder's sense of humor occasionally. But I mean, I really do. It's like a guilty pleasure, except I don't feel guilty. And it's not that I don't feel guilty because I think he's right. I don't feel guilty because I think he's genuinely funny. You know what I mean? Like sometimes he takes positions on things, and I'm like, dude, I think that would be a defendable position, but you're not defending the position now. You're misdirecting, which
Right.
is a shame because he's really good at defending a good position when he does it.
Right.
Like to me, he's at least as good as Ben Shapiro at disassembling somebody else's flawed position.
Bad argument. Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. But he's also, but he very much likes to poke at you. He likes
Right,
to troll
right,
you, to make you, expose how foolish your position is first.
right.
But
Well, that's
that's
the
something
way it
that's
seems to
something
me.
that's something Tucker Carlson does too. I've seen him do it on too many interviews now. I haven't. I probably have seen 10 of his interviews. And out of like 8 of them, he takes an indefensible position on purpose to see if the opponent has actually thought through their opinion and thought through their position. He will take an indefensible position absolutely on purpose just to see, is the other person even awake? And like 7 out of 8 times, the other person doesn't even bite. They're just like, yeah, right.
Good night.
What? And like there's this one interview he did with someone where they said, we want to cut these trees down on this golf course because they were originally planted to hide the golf course, to hide the fact that there was a
The
black
blacks.
portion of town. Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so they
The
were
racist
planted,
trees. I remember that.
They were planted with racist intent. And he said, yeah, I think you're right. I'm pretty sure you're right. But why should the trees suffer? Because and he was just waiting. He was just waiting for the guy to say, because people are more important than trees. But the guy never got there. Now, that was actually a pretty polite conversation, and the guy knew his stuff pretty well, but he just couldn't figure out why he was making this argument, and he couldn't figure out that the right answer here was because people have more value than trees. And so the trees need to come down. And then I think Tucker was like, oh, Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, that's right. I think people are more important than trees. So, okay. But he was taking this ridiculous position that was clearly just to see how far have you thought through this position. Like, and sometimes he takes a position and it's very principled. And it's like, well, how far have you really thought through this position and what would happen if you did this? And it would be terrible. And he does that sometimes. But sometimes he takes the position just to see how far can I push you before you're going to admit that you really have no idea what you're talking about. But he also does like to boil things down to one issue that he knows the other party won't agree with him on,
Yeah.
and then not let him go on to their point until they talk through that issue. But sometimes it's just to get them to actually state a position that they won't state. Like, we want to get rid of all guns, and they won't say that, so they want to bring it down to
Right.
some. But anyway, I really do think that he plays the troll too in a different way than Steven Crowder does.
Well, but okay. So the thing about solutions, I really hadn't put a lot of thought into that.
Well, so I've proposed my one solution for, again, communicating online with high signal to noise to you.
Mm-hmm.
No one else here knows it, but I proposed a solution. I don't know for certain if it would work. I don't know for certain if it's feasible, but I proposed an idea, right? And I think the communication idea is starting to be worked through. We're starting to come up with ways to have this communication go on. It's clunky still. There's still issues, but I think we're starting to have those coming together. But so we need to have the communication so we can start solving the problems. But we need to have some solutions to these problems. And right now, the only people who are pushing any kinds of policy level solutions that aren't rip up everything else, rip up what came before, are the Democrats right now. They're the ones that are proposing policy solutions. They're tragic, in many cases, horrible solutions that will cause many more problems than they solve, but they're proposing what they see as solutions. And I really think this is a problem. I think this is a big deal that is kind of a blind spot right now. We are so caught up in this, you won't let me say anything. Everything I say is racist, sexist, fascist, homophobic. What is it? The six HERs?
The what?
Sexist. So there's a group in England that calls themselves the Sixers, and I think it's SIXHIVR, definite six herb. It is. I think it's maybe a gad sad thing. An acronym term to describe alleged conservative traits. I think he came up with this. Six herb. Sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, bigot. Only a six herb would support immigration reform, for instance. So that's. I think there's a group in London that that was organizing maybe the protest that they call themselves the Six Herbs.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. So, but anyway, we've been sidetracked by this. No one will listen to us because they're just calling us these things, and we need to have these conversations, and we need to be able to disagree, and that needs to be okay. And it's an important conversation, but there are real issues like schools in the inner cities suck. They don't get funding because funding is local, and there's no money because no one there owns their homes. It's all owned by, and all the home values are low. And then if in the case that some white people or wealthy people decide that they want to come into the area and start fixing it up, then all the people who live there get pushed out and it gets gentrified, which is theoretically a good idea because you're fixing up the area and making it nicer and it was downtrodden, but in practice ends up being a bad thing because all these people who were living there have to leave and they have nowhere to go because you just gentrified where they lived and where their work is and all that stuff. So there's all these issues, and we're not talking about these problems. We're just talking about how we don't want to be called sexist, homophobic. We don't want to be six herbs every time we say something. I guess it says it's Dennis Prager's acronym for the debate-ending names conservatives are called by liberals.
Mm-hmm.
And someone has added six herb baits. So it's okay. So someone suggested six herb bats, which adds ageist, transphobic, and specious to the end. And someone added in the middle between the transphobic and specious, you should add Eurocentric. And they haven't figured out how to throw in a J or a C for Judeo-Christian. Someone said, "Don't forget colonialist and warmongering." But anyway,
yeah.
Uh,
Had somebody call me
anyways,
a colonialist.
did you really?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, on social media. It was here
Yeah.
a while back, and they said, I don't even remember what the deal was. I wasn't even getting, like, into a, it was a disagreement.
So what is your
but I was
Twitter
just
handle, by the way?
Jefferson the Hick, I think. Jefferson, hang on. Is it Jefferson Hick? I think it is. It is Jefferson _Hick.
Not Hick _ Jefferson. This is an important difference.
Jefferson _Hick. Because, you know. I was talking to my sister today. I think I texted you some of this, but I was talking to my sister today. I'm considering buying a small old church building,
Right.
and converting it into a house.
You know,
And,
Jordan Peterson replied to you. You know that, right? In
Do
November. Jordan Peterson replied to you in November.
Did he really?
See that now? Yeah, Twitter is tricky that way. .. at Jefferson _Hick.
Oh, yeah. Sure enough. I remember that now. Yeah.
Sorry.
I
didn't know you were famous.
Yeah, well, I'm famous, or even Captain Kangaroo. So anyway, I was telling my sister today about this church, because it's got a kitchen, and it's got rooms, and it's got things that I should be able to make it comfortably livable very, very quickly. And then, but it's got like a basement, like a full basement with a kitchen and bathrooms and big classrooms and things like that down there that I could use for bedrooms, and a kitchen, obviously, and things like that, and make comfortable quickly. And then figure out what I was going to do with, like, the upstairs, where there's a couple of offices, what was once the sanctuary, and so one of the things that I am considering is turning that, at least for the time being, into a kind of a maker space. You know, I mean, like, have a library, like a bigger library. You know, I've got this little room in this house that's probably was a formal parlor at when the house was built, the house I'm in right now. And, you know, I have no use for 2 sets of living room furniture. So this room, and I'm in it right now, is the library. But it's not very big, and I've only got 3 or 4 big bookshelves full of books. That's all that'll fit. But, you know, if you've got a whole sanctuary, you can have a great big library, and also have stations for doing things like bookbinding, and for drawing, and set up a little station just to, you know, along the walls, just set tables up until I figure out what it is that I want to do up there. I've basically got a great big creator studio upstairs for me and the kids. So I was telling my sister this, and she said, "Oh, you're a hipster," which, you know, she likes picking at me about. I pick at her and my brother-in-law about being kind of hipsters, because they actually are. But a few years ago, we went to Oklahoma on vacation, and we spent one evening. We went with my sister, and me and the kids went with my sister and brother-in-law and their kids to the art district in Oklahoma City. It's called Paseo, and there's, you know, little artist studios, and there's all these little hippie bars and bar and grills, and there's, you know, like Lucky Special hipster pizza here, and boutique ice cream there, and just all kinds of great stuff. So I'm walking around, and I was wearing what I always wear, which is jeans and a pearl snap shirt, work shirt, and, you know, work boots, because they're comfortable. And I mean, I was clean. I hadn't sweated through these clothes earlier in the day, and everything was covered up. They weren't like ragged and with holes or anything, but that's what I typically wear. Uh, and I looked around, and everywhere I looked, there were guys with expensive hairdos and sideburns, uh, dressed just like me. And I thought, oh, well, that dude's got his shirt kind of like, kind of like one I've got hung up in the closet. And hey, that guy's got a jacket just like my jacket. And hey, that dude's got boots. I've got a pair of boots. I used to wear a pair of boots just like that. They're real good. So I was thinking that about like the 18th guy I saw, I said something about, I thought this was a kind of a hippie, art walky sort of a neighborhood up here. And my sister said, oh, it is. And I was like, well, these are just like normal people walking around here. And she said, no, no, these are hipsters. And I said, well, they're dressed just like me. And she said, yes, but they're doing it ironically. Which, so anyway, when she said that today, oh, you're being a hipster. And I was like, no, I'm a poor old ignorant redneck who don't be supposed to know better. I ain't a hipster. And she said, well, that's what the hipsters want to be. So it occurred to me that I am, at least according to her, the ideal, the hipster ideal. Like hipsters, deep in their soul, they want to be me in the fullness of time and in the fullness of their competency. I am their Odysseus. That is awesome to me. And so
you're an indie.
Do what?
You're an indie.
Oh, well, I guess so.
So an indie is someone who does something because they think it, not because everyone else is doing it.
Because they think what?
They like it and they think it's cool and they don't care what anyone else thinks about it. They think it'll be a really cool thing.
Well,
that's it. And then hipsters copy the indies.
I gotcha. Well, I don't know how the hipsters are going to do when it comes time to build some calluses up.
No,
some of these I had to earn.
they're gonna order them from Amazon. And
oh yeah. Well, you can buy a kit. You can buy a kit. I don't recommend going with the latex calluses or the silicone calluses. You're better off just going straight rawhide and super glue. You're much farther ahead of the game that way.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Anyway.
There's a lot of interesting stuff there. I would have to say, I've been interested with this idea, and you've read my first draft or partial draft of it. Yeah, this idea of we should be renaming this idea of implicit bias or subconscious bias to something a little bit more accurate, which is experiential bias. Because I think that when you hear subconscious or explicit bias, it doesn't sound like there's any basis for it. Like it's basisless bias. But we all have what?
I was going to say, please explain.
So we all have experiences in life, and you and I hashed this out a little bit. That I think we've part of our survival as a species has been that, hey, if that last time you ate that plant when that fruit looked like that, you got horribly sick, so don't eat that fruit when it looks like that. Or last time you went into a cave that was that big and smelled like that, you got chased out by a bear, so don't go into caves that look like that and smell like that. And hey, stake it out, maybe there's a bear in there. And we're really good at spotting these patterns and then assigning this internal unconscious risk analysis to them that then tells us, hey, that could be a problem, be aware. And we still have that mechanism, and it's still functioning. And what happens is, and I gave some examples, if you are a police officer who works in the inner city and everyone you arrest is a black man because that's who the population is, then it becomes real easy for you to start saying, oh, in your head, your mind starts making this automatic connection that, if you're looking for a criminal, you're looking for a black man, which is obviously not true everywhere, obviously not even true there, but it's this pattern that your brain sees. And it's very easy now. What we have to guard against is we have to not throw the net too wide. We can't go with, you know, all black men. You have to say, oh, well, there's other signs too, right? There's other things that set them apart. It's not just that. Um, that, but we still get this pattern, this learned danger sense that is trying to keep us safe. That says this is risky. I've identified this as risky because I've seen it before. And so
Right.
you have this bias in your brain based on your experiences, and it works for everybody. It works for the black man going about his business and driving while black. You know, he's
Right.
out there, he's not doing anything, but he gets pulled over because he is a black man driving, and there was, you know, something happened in the area, or you know, anything. I don't even know why exactly that happens, and it's one of the things that even Larry Elder says, yeah, that happens. This is a problem that we want to deal with.
Right.
That you know, and he sees himself as being, you know, he constantly gets harassed from the police when he's doing nothing. And so he starts feeling like all the police are out to get him. And, you know, the police are just bad. And, you know, you don't ever talk to the police. Don't ever, you know, you should never engage with the police. The police are bad. They're out to get you. They're out to stop you. That's his pattern. And that's his experience and his bias. And it's, again, not true of every police officer. It's not true of every, you know, guy he sees out there in uniform, but his body's got this safety sense that says anytime you're around one of these people, you're in potential danger. And so everyone has these patterns that we have experienced something in our life, and it has reinforced or built this pattern in our mind that says this is danger. But when you start saying that it's experiential bias, you're not justifying the bias, but you're justifying the existence of it. You're not saying that it's right, that what you believe or what your body's telling you is always true. We're not telling you that you haven't maybe cut it down fine enough and said, you know, actually there was a pattern beyond just he was a police officer. You know, there was more of a pattern than that. Or, you know, it was more than just, you know, it was a black man, or, you know, there's more to it. I also talked about the example of you're a guy, somewhat less contentious. You're a guy, let's say, because I'm a guy and you're a guy, and you've had a series of 3 or 4 relationships which have all ended poorly when your significant other cheated on you. And so you just start to think that all women are cheaters, and you might as well just write them all off. And, you know, there's another pattern there. It's not just all women are cheaters, but you have this continuous, you know, feedback that tells you that every woman you've ever been interested in has been a cheater. And so your experiences aren't useless. They aren't invalid, but we need to be aware that we have these experiences and they're, you know, coloring our perceptions, and we need to be aware of that coloring. But by making it by calling it not unconscious or subconscious, by calling it experiential, you're saying, you know, you arrived to this conclusion honestly, but you may need to question the conclusion you arrived at. And that's a much more, I think for many people, that's a much more palatable thing than to say, oh, we have no idea why you have that bias. You just do, which kind of makes you think you're just kind of a bad person because you have that bias regardless of any evidence to any reason to the contrary. You have no reason for it whatsoever.
Right. Which is foolish.
Again,
and
right.
You know, we've talked about it. I don't even know that we've talked about it in these conversations before. And I know we've talked about it, that if you've got somebody from the outside, like Kanye, and outside these talking points or outside these issues, who hasn't thought about them, and then and he thinks about them, and he is exposed to them for whatever reason, and you tell him that thing is only being said by, you know, communist cannibals. And if everybody tells him, well, that thing right there that guy said, you know, that whole free thought thing, that's all a bunch of communist cannibals. And if the whole world is saying that, and Kanye isn't extremely careful, and I'm using Kanye for an example, but a guy isn't extremely careful, very methodical, it might become easy for him to go, well, increasingly so, for him to go, well, maybe I'm a communist cannibal. I guess I'm a communist cannibal. That dude said the sky's blue, and this guy over here is saying the sky's entitled. You know, so or you know what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
I think we push a lot of people. I think the left pushes a lot of people to the right, and I think conservatives don't push the left into the position they're in now. But we haven't traditionally been as good at this as we should have been. Actually, I think we're
Yeah.
conservative. Now, I'm identifying as a conservative, I guess, or for the moment, but because I'm conservative-ish or
Yeah.
conservative adjacent. But I think conservatives are doing a better job of reaching out and giving somebody else a fair shake. Now, I don't mean all conservatives, and frankly, the vast majority of conservatives and day-to-day stuff, face-to-face dealings, and the vast majority of people who identify as the left do this. They do it. We give each other the benefit of the doubt. You're standing there talking to a guy. He's not chewing your ear or your eyeball out of your head. And when he says something wacky, you go, oh, well, but this is so-and-so. I've borrowed the mower from him before. Or this is so-and-so. That time that tree fell down across my driveway, he helped come over and get it cleared out. Or when his cat got
Yeah.
caught up on the roof, he came over and asked if he could borrow the ladder, and we went over and got the cat down. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's, and I kind of get it. The the left has staked this as a moral position that you must be for these things. There is no there is no option because they're the only right things. And so therefore, if you're not for these things, you can't be one of them, right? They've
right.
staked it as a moral position. I'm not saying it's a valid moral position that they're in, or uh, I think they are short-sighted in basically saying this is the only solution rather than, hey, wait, maybe that's not the best solution. Maybe there's a better solution, and we should think about it. But but basically, hey, we want the same end in a lot of cases. We want ideally the same end. We want everyone to have an equal opportunity. Now, maybe they don't want that end, but in general, I think all of them would say, yeah, everyone should have an equal opportunity regardless. And I think most conservatives would say, yeah, everyone should have an equal opportunity regardless. But what does that look like? That doesn't look like everyone gets the same endpoint. And a lot of people would think that, oh, well, because if you adhere to blank slateism, right, then everyone with the same starting point will end up at the same ending point. And then when you say, well, yeah, we're all for, equal opportunity, and they say, well, show it, you're not worried about this. Well, yeah, but that's outcome. I'm not guaranteeing the same outcome for equal opportunity. Well, why not? Everyone's the same. Well, no. So there we have a fundamental disagreement, but we all agree. Let's go back to we all agree that we want everyone to have equal opportunity, but then they won't even talk to you because you don't want, some specific thing on the other side. And I think that's, we're not trying to, that bridge isn't being made where we say, hey, we all agree on this. How about we work together on this and we leave our other disagreements out to the side? And I think conservatives are slightly better at doing that, at least right now. I think and again, everyone who is classical liberal over is considered to the right at this point in time. So even progressives who just think for themselves are considered on the right at this time. And so let's just call us all conservatives. I'm going to lump everyone in there as conservatives, are better at this idea that, hey, you know what? There's something we agree on. And I see a lot of conservative speakers, and this is something that Ben Shapiro tries to do, and I give him credit for this. He's like, I'm trying to find common ground. What can we both agree on? And then can we work from there? And they don't want to, most of the people he talks to don't want to do that.
Right,
They,
right.
they don't want to have that.
It happens rarely on Twitter to me. I mean, like, there have been a few
Yeah.
conversations that something about my mood that day or something about a comment or something just kind of rang with me like this guy means something. I mean, not this person means something in the scheme of things, but this person intends something valuable.
Right, they're trying to actually get a point across, not just, or do something important, not just make noise.
Right.
Is that what you mean?
Right. And so we'd have a conversation where I end up spending rather more time than I intended to explain. No, anyway, what I've found is, and I'm really not good at this. Hang on just a second. I need to write a note here to my lovely assistant. Okay. I need to get better at listening, and I don't have a good strategy for that, Steve. I mean, I have things that I try to do, and sometimes they work, and sometimes they don't serve me well enough. So I start to doubt the validity of an exercise. Oh, you okay?
Yeah, it's stupid light cover in our shower keeps falling down.
It didn't land on
Fortunately, it's
anybody,
plastic.
did it?
No, no one's in there. It just landed
Okay.
on the tile. It's plastic, fortunately, so when it falls, it just whacks the floor and makes a horrible noise.
Right. Well, if you hear a horrible noise here, it'll be me shouting at
One of your kids?
Yeah, one of the kids. Okay, so what I was going to say is, and a brief tangent. I got a ticket to go see Jordan Peterson in June, and I need to I've been trying to think of a good question. Because I got like a million questions, so I'm having to,
Right.
figure out. And I think what I'm just going to do is say, hey, do you have some exercises or some advice for how to listen a little bit better? Because those conversations that I was talking about, they worked out once I could. Well, one of them, a dude even called me a colonist, and I was like, well, I'll tell you, I was born here, for one. Two, the people that lived in my house before me, I didn't, kill them and take the house. I said, I will give you this amount of money for that house, and they said, woohoo, and so I don't know where you're going with colonist, and then the conversation started, and at a certain point, I was somehow got it boiled down to getting the actual problems that an actual thoughtful person on the left might identify, and say, hey, this needs to be done. It's if they say, well, cops killing blacks is one of our big things, I'm like, well, you obviously don't know many things about the big things. I'm not saying that that's an irrelevant thing, and I'm not saying that that's not a thing which involves strong feelings. If it involves fear, it involves strong feelings. But that's not an issue facing but he said something about law enforcement and the courts, and then he was like, which is largely an extension of the war on drugs being handled badly for decades, and also housing and the black family. And I thought, this dude's done some head scratching. He's not up there spouting because he also is what did you call him? You didn't call him LELs. What did you call them? The guys, the not having sex guys.
Oh, incels.
Incels. He wasn't like a dude who was an incel for the left trying to get that one blue-haired girl to
Uh-huh.
So he'd been thinking about it and was like, hey, you know, and so we actually had, and not just me and him, a couple other guys jumped in, and we were like, hey, we had a decent conversation where nobody had any solutions. I mean,
Yeah.
like he he started listing these issues, and I like took them and ran with them. I was like, yeah, well, yeah. Let me give you a worse one than that. Yeah, you think? Well, let me lay some family statistics on you and some, and some statistics about fatherless communities or largely fatherless communities and how awful that is for everybody in the community. And for example, and he was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And but we don't have a solution. And he didn't have a solution, and I didn't have a
Right.
solution. But we were able to have a conversation. If we had been in the same room, we could have had a nuanced conversation. And again,
Right.
solutions to these aren't going to be easy at all.
Right.
They're
Yep.
really, really not.
And I think it does start with having the conversation, but I think we need to be offering something. I don't know. I feel like if we just keep saying, no, 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 you're wrong, you need to talk to us. No, 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 you're wrong, you need to talk to us. And we never say, hey,
Well,
here's an idea. Maybe this could address this particular problem. I
I'm
think
all
I think
for.
it's important to be able to
We
I think
need
it's
some
important to have the
ideas.
conversations. You absolutely need to have the conversations. You need to have the conversations across the board with everybody that we can involve. Well, obviously, the conversation needs to be had. It needs to be had by a lot of people, a lot of smart people, so that people can put, one person here might have part of the solution, another person here might have part of the solution, another person might have hey, you know what? The solution can only be this good. Like this is the best we can do is this far. Like I can prove to you that you can't do better than this. So if we can get to there, we should be happy and we should try, like then you're gonna have to, like that's as far as we can do it by, direct intervention or things like that. Or, if we're gonna go further than this, we risk this and things like that. So I don't think that the communication isn't important. The communications is hugely important, and it's awesome when you can actually talk to someone. You can actually have a conversation with someone.
Yes. Yes.
And there are some benefits to do. There are some benefits to doing it online or in written form, because you have time to you can read the whole thing. If you're disciplined enough to say, I'm going to read this whole thing rather than just respond to the first sentence that ticks me off. um, you can get their whole argument rather than interrupting someone when they say something, and just not really ever hearing what the other person has to say. But then you lose out on the rapid exchange of ideas and the tone of voice and the intent, because you can get a lot of, hey, like I totally accept that this is a problem, and you can convey that in person more convincingly, I think, and better and more immediately than, yes, that's a problem, but there's, and then you can say, this is a problem. We need to solve this problem. But here are the problems I see with solving that problem, like the pitfalls I see with solving that problem, and how do we avoid those? And they can get that, rather than you just trying to discard what they say, because they can read that as, oh yeah, sure, that's a problem, but when really what you're saying is, yeah, we need to solve that, but I don't want to solve that by doing this. Um, all right, I have to get going in just a minute, but I do want to point out that Brett Weinstein is on Twitter today saying what I've been saying about cultural appropriation
Yep.
for, I think, 3 weeks now, 4 weeks now.
Yep. Yes,
We
he is.
better darn well be appropriating the things from other cultures. That's how we make our cultures better.
Right. Right. Well,
And
that's
yes,
that's common sense
and there
stuff.
are
You know.
and there are ways that it can be offensive, and we should avoid those ways. But
Well.
just appreciating someone else's culture and wanting to emulate it is not one of those ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are clearly ways that, like, I don't think anyone should be going, putting on blackface, like in general. Like, obviously there was Tropic Thunder where they did it on purpose, but in general, like, the old school, just like black, just on the face kind of thing. Okay, that's, I think it points back to too many bad, historical precedents. There are things that can be very offensive, like extremely offensive. And if you're trying to say, I love this culture, and then you're doing something extremely offensive with your use of the culture, that then you're clearly not saying I love this culture. But when you're basically saying I really like this culture, I really appreciate it, and this thing in the culture is super cool and I want to make use of that, yeah, go do that. Like, he says math.
Right. Fire.
We use Arabic numerals in our math.
Right.
If we hadn't appropriated Arabic numerals, we'd still be unable to do math, because you can't do most of the operations on Roman numerals.
Well, okay. Neanderthals were the first people that anybody's aware of who were able to develop edged tools that were a molecule wide at the edge, right? Obsidian flakes, down to a molecule wide. So, what if the Neanderthals were still here today and they were going, "Hey, you people, quit using molecules now.
Use knives.
Done. No molecules." Well, it's possible Australopithecus or even or almost certainly Homo erectus had edged tools. Did they have those kind of edged tools? Doubtful.
Right.
Well, I say doubtful. We don't know, but we do know Neanderthal caves with their bones had some of those tools.
Whatever happened to, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery?
Whatever happened to, we're human beings. We pay attention to one another. We you and I were talking about heritability the other day, and I was listening to a talk that Brett Weinstein and his wife Heather Hying, is that how you say it? Okay, and somebody else.
Rhymes with flying.
Okay, yep, there you go. Okay, so they were talking about heritability, and he said, we are as blank a slate as there is. We are blanker slates than every other living creature on the earth, and are getting to this position where we as a species are today is the direct result of us becoming increasingly blanker slates, and still there is serious heritability to contend with. And part of that blank slate is you take the things that you see the people around you doing, which works.
Right. Right.
You watch mom and dad walk all over the house. They walk into a dark room. What do? They walk over to the doorway and they flip the light switch on. The lights come on. And so it doesn't take a kid very long, to a baby very long, to associate, hey, there's something going on over there. I can affect the whole room from that one little place. And so what does a little kid do? They flip the switch just as millions of times as you'll let them do it. As soon as they can reach it, rather. So the whole, it's a non-argument. It's not that it's silly and it's petty and it makes no sense to anyone. I mean, there's no way you can follow it and
live in our society.
Right. Well, live anywhere. Where are you going to live?
What is the benefit? What is the benefit of multiculturalism if you can't take ideas from other cultures and backgrounds?
Right.
If I can't look at that idea that you bring from your culture or background and say, that's a really good idea, I'm going to use it. If that's off limits, what's the point? So we can all sit in our little glass bubbles and do our part and never mix. What's the melting pot is about bringing all these cultures and ideas together and absorbing them into a new whole where
trying things out, finding out what works. The best of them
rise to the top and everyone uses. Now, it's one, I think there is a little bit of this, I think a little bit of this whole appropriation thing has come from this idea that there's a lot of things that when a population learns about it, and let's just say in America, the white population learns about it, they go on line. I just learned about the greatest thing ever. It's this, blah, 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 blah. My hairdresser does it. I've never seen it before. It's amazing. And there's, like other people who are like, we've been doing that for like centuries.
Right, right.
And you're basically now saying that, oh, this is the greatest thing, and you're kind of claiming it. Like I kind of get that idea. Like, hey, yeah, that is great. It's awesome. I'm glad you like it. Hey, I'll show you how we do it. Like I think that's a better response than, oh, you're appropriating. Yeah, no, it's a great thing. Yeah, enjoy it. But you didn't invent it. Like,
Right,
this
right.
is something that's from another culture, and that other culture. Oh, hey, look at the long history of it in this culture. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Rather
Yeah.
than how dare you, like something that isn't from your culture.
And well, I,
Isn't
I
that the goal?
I think
Isn't
I
that the
think
goal?
it is a bad rhetoric tool. I'm really genuinely hoping that we're getting away from some of this. Again, I'm not trying to pin all my hopes on Kanye.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm glad that Kanye seems to see the things that he seems to see. I'm glad that he
Mm-hmm.
talks about the things that he talks about. Um, but I'm glad I hope that we're getting away from this victim mentality thing, because it's not just not productive. It's anti-productive. You can't have any
Yeah.
kind of conversation. You can't. I mean,
Yeah.
it precludes any kind of conversation. It prevents. I'll say it that way. It prevents any kind
Yeah.
of conversation. It just stops it.
Right.
Um,
Yep. By the way, I'm just finally catching up to Eric Weinstein's post from 9 hours ago. Do you see that? A new
um,
friend, a new friend was facing life-threatening opioid dependence in the U.S. and
new,
not told about iboga by medical professionals. Blah blah blah. But who's the new friend facing life-threatening opioid dependence?
might that be Kanye?
Sounds like it.
Maybe I don't know.
Anyway, that's exciting.
Yeah, yeah,
He also then his one right before that from was, that's it. I'm recalling the Old Testament. So
yeah.
Christians are
I
sorry for
saw,
any inconvenience, but you
I
had a good
saw
run.
that one. I saw that one. Dude, I'll tell you,
He does
he
not tweet
says
often, but when he
clever.
does,
He does, and he says some funny things. But man, Brett, his sense of humor, he's got the dad sense of humor. Like,
oh yeah,
he does, man. That dude, he'll nail it on 3 levels all at the same time. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
he's, man, when he's got his A game, I'm like in awe. Really. I was thinking about this. I think I even tweeted something to him the other day about it. I was like, he had one of those, and I read it, and then I laughed, and I thought about it, and it made me laugh some more, and I thought about it some more, and I was like, man, this is one of those rabbit holes. This is one of those rabbit holes that never ends.
yeah.
But anyway, my response to him was, I replied, and I don't, so did a million other people. But it was that if in the future, if these sorts of tweets are the things that serve as limericks on bathroom walls, of the future, that we're going to be in an okay place.
Yeah.
But I still wouldn't mind the occasional mention of Nantucket, of course. But
Did you see? Did you see Weinstein's tweet from a couple hours ago? It was, careful, Dave, you aren't exactly Italian. To Dave's comment, I
yeah,
wonder if he'd let me ride the Zamboni.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Only Italians on
Italians and
Zambonis.
those pesky Italians and their hockey.
Anyway, I got to get to
Yeah.
bed.
All right, dude. I gotta go
Good fun talking.
chasing people around the house till they get in bed.
Oh, you still got people running around the house? Well, I guess it's only
Well,
9:30.
one of them was just running. Yeah, I'm in a different time zone than you, but they're still up later than they needed to be. One of them has
Yeah.
a test tomorrow, so anyway,
All right.
later, man. I dug it.
Later. Yep, it was fun.
Bye.
Bye.